Hello. I am a resident of Carver County, and I've never done a YouTube video before, so not quite totally sure how this is going to go. But I didn't really know what else to do because I am facing a situation right now with within our county, within our state, that is extremely troubling, and it's making me sick. And I think by not standing up and saying something about it, it's making it worse. So we'll see how this goes. But recently I came into contact, I guess, with a video that was illustrating a bunch of things that are happening within the Carver County school system. And as a resident myself, obviously I took interest. And the video was extremely troubling. I don't believe everything that I see. As a matter of fact, I'm probably the opposite. If I hear something, I will study it and try to disprove it, essentially, because I think that's in this day and age, it's the responsible thing to do, is to inform yourself. So I saw this, and then I started doing some research, and the things that I found were extremely troubling. And I'd like to take a moment to discuss those things today and hopefully raise some awareness and get you guys asking questions. Before I do, I think it's really important that we as citizens, as neighbors, as friends, as family, put aside any political differences, because this is not about a Democrat or Republican issue. This is about our children and the safety of our children and the education of our children. We all want the same thing. We all want our kids to be safe and to go to school and get a good education. If we didn't, we wouldn't have moved out here. We wouldn't live in the cities that we live in. We wouldn't wave at each other as we drive down the street. But that's what it is. That's who we are. And so as such, it's really important that we keep that in the forefront. But what I saw in this video was extremely troubling, and I started to dig into it, and I started to ask questions, and a lot of what I was finding was what they were saying in this video. And even though, it may come off as scripted, I mean, they're not actors, so it's gonna be scripted. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was this survey that was sent out to parents last year. So this survey, we were sent it an email by the superintendent of Carver County, or Eastern Carver County Schools, Clint Christopher. And in this email, it said essentially that the district was going to go through equity work, and they required parents to take a survey. This email was sent on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. So people are getting ready to go out of town. It's their first summer trip of the year. Not exactly the prime time to get the attention of a parent. And it just said that we'd be receiving a survey, via somebody that we didn't know, and to be looking forward to that in the next few days. Didn't say what the specifics of the survey were. Didn't say anything regarding anybody else other than the person receiving the email. It just was addressed to the parent. So within a couple of days, the next 2 weeks actually, 2 emails were sent by an individual's Gmail account, somebody that, again, I didn't know. And I remember looking at this, thinking to myself, okay, this is coming from a private email. I don't know. I don't know. But I didn't really think too much of it because, again, it was the last week of school. So my mind wasn't focused on taking a survey. My mind was focused on getting everything ready for my kids and for the summer. And so a few months went by and I was alerted to the questions of this survey. And at first I thought, that can't be right. That can't be right. So I went in and looked at it after watching this video, and I was absolutely shocked. I understand the necessity to ask questions, to gain insight from parents, from students, from teachers. I get it. That's how we build. That's how we grow. But these questions were leading. They were sensitive in nature, and they were flat out inappropriate. Because when I found out that this survey was given to kids ages 5th grade and up, and parents were not told that their children were given this survey. And on the 80th question, I think it was the 80th question, it asks, do you consider yourself transgender, gender queer, gender fluid, or unsure about your gender identity? And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's the actual question. And my mouth hit the floor, because this was asked of our kids without our consent, without our knowledge, without our ability to opt out. We were never given the questions in advance. So you're asking kids to fill out information about something that they know nothing about. I mean, I know 5th graders that are 9 years old. So we have an adult asking a 9-year-old about their sexual identity. And they're doing that, they did it without telling anybody that they were doing it. That should speak to every single parent, every single person in this community right there. Because, one, we have no idea who these people are that are collecting the data. We don't know them. I don't know them. Do you know them? They don't live in the cities that they're representing. We have no knowledge of who they are and what they're doing with that information. We also have no knowledge of whether they are keeping or tracking that information. When I found out about this, I reached out to some computer buddies of mine that are familiar with the process of hacking. They know how to hack. And I asked them, I said, well, can SurveyMonkey, which is where the survey was given from, can it be tracked? Can you find out who said what? Because they say that it's anonymous. And they said, well, first of all, it's only anonymous if it's set up that way. So whoever sets up the admin settings for the survey can set it to whether it's been tracked or not. And there was nothing in there that you would be able to determine whether or not it was tracked, other than the person that is giving the survey telling you. So again, that goes back to, do you know them? Do you trust them to believe them when they just tell you this thing? And again, to remind you, they did this without telling anybody ahead of time. So you really don't have any basis for trusting these people to begin with, because they have not earned that. And secondly, he said, yeah, you can absolutely hack it. Not only can you hack the results to the point where you can set it up and have 10 people answer 10 different ways, but you can get the results to be every answer however you want them to be answered. But that you can actually hack and track the URL to the survey, to the IP address in which the person took that survey. So if they're taking that at home, it will then correlate the URL, which is where the survey is, to the internet address of who answered the questions. So they can very, very easily determine whether your 9-year-old child considers themselves genderqueer. Okay? That should be alarming in and of itself, but that the school board rolled this out, either, one, unknowingly, they either didn't know what the questions were in advance and yet allowed these people to proceed no matter what, or they approved it. And I don't know which one is worse, honestly. I don't know if knowingly asking minor children about their sexual identity is worse or better than allowing a complete stranger to do the same thing. I honestly don't know. I don't know which is more irresponsible or bad. So the fact that they did this is outrageous to me. And it should be outrageous to you, no matter whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, because it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with any of that. It is exclusively based upon the safety of our children and giving sexual preferences to adults without you knowing it, without you, the parent, being informed, is wrong. And I'll take this opportunity to remind you that the principal for Chanhassen High School, who was approved by this board of directors, the school board, is currently serving a 5-year prison sentence because he had child pornography on his computer at work while working. The same board. I'm not saying the same people. I don't know if the same people are. As a matter of fact, I think the chairman was in an overlap. Don't quote me on that. So when I found this out, I was absolutely shocked. And then I noticed that within this video, which again, people are calling propaganda, whatever, I don't care. Is the information accurate? And that's what you should all be asking yourself. That's what you should all be looking into. I noticed that the question was different. On the video, that same question, I think it was like 120. Well, on the survey that I looked at, which was for the parents, we only went up to 100. So that means there's at least 20 questions that were asked to a student that were not asked to an adult. What did you ask? Why did the surveys differ? Why did you do all of this at a time in which nobody's going to take this survey? People aren't going to be really focused on it. And then to ask these kind of questions. So why did you do that? That should be question one. That should be the alarm that every single one of you should be concerned with right now. And it has nothing to do with political affiliation. So I brought this to the most recent school board meeting a few weeks ago. I'd never been to a school board meeting in my entire life. And I was ready to speak to it. Well, when I got there, I was shocked at the conduct in which this school board operated. As soon as we got there, we were given a lecture from the chairman saying how this is a politically charged environment and they're not here, it's not meant to be political and blah, blah, blah. And essentially chastising anybody that had the audacity to ask some of these questions. And so I got there ready to speak, and I found out that we were only given a total of 45 minutes in this open hearing. Okay, well, that's fine. Rules are rules, except for the fact that those rules changed. And I know this because I've just recently seen a previous agenda from back in June. And in that agenda, it just line lists the open hearing as each person has 3 minutes. Nowhere did it say that there was a limit on total time. And the reason that is because once other parents started to catch wind about this survey, they started asking questions, and people started to show up. So they began to limit the ability for people, for the community, to speak their mind. Now, I will remind you that these board members are elected officials. They are paid with our tax dollars. And they are limiting the people, no matter which side you stand on this, from being able to effectively speak their mind. Does that sound like something that would reek of transparency? Or does that sound like people that really don't want the actual truth to come out, or for people to question their narrative? I mean, I get it. If you are operating in a charged environment, yeah, it's going to take time. Some of those meetings are gonna take a while. But you know what? Fine. Then people have the opportunity to listen to both sides. I heard some really compelling arguments from people that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, right? Just imagine what could happen if both sides had the opportunity to do that, or if they didn't limit it. Because again, the way that it seemed was that they didn't want one particular side to be able to speak about it. And again, I ask you, is that right? Is that fair? Does that seem like the people that you have elected are representing your values? Because it doesn't seem like that way to me. So I went there, and again, I'm watching this, this threat of any clapping would lead to a recess. Even though I saw a video of the most recent one prior to that, and there was plenty of clapping. Nobody was outrageous. There wasn't anything that was violent or out of order, and yet here he is, pound out of order, and I actually started laughing. I was like, is this guy serious? Is he serious? So you see this, and the primary issue with most people that were there on both sides was this notion of equity. And I'm like, up until this point, what the hell is equity? I don't even know what this means. Doesn't that just mean people are all treated the same? No, that would be equality. Equity means that you are affording certain people accommodations, giving them what they need in order to succeed. Again, that doesn't sound bad, right? That doesn't sound bad to me. Of course you will. Of course you're going to give people what they need in order to succeed. But when you take it a step further and you start talking about things like achievement gaps and punishment gaps, what does that, hold on a second, what does that mean? And you start digging down a little bit, and you start noticing that what they're doing is they're taking how a person looks, their physical appearance, and using that as the basis for whether they're succeeding or not. So again, first off, I don't even know how to react to something like that, because I was taught growing up that you don't make assumptions based on how a person looks, regardless. You just don't. Because we know this for a definitive fact. Every single human being on this planet is different. There's never been two equally created from a genetic perspective people in the history of the world. Every single person is totally unique. So of course we're going to be different. Why does the color of our skin play a part? It doesn't. It's silly. And so you see these people getting all up in arms about, these things like achievement gaps, and it doesn't make any sense. First of all, how are you basing this information on a subjective point of view? You're saying, well, we have 300 white people in this school, and we've got 200 black people in this school, and here's how we know this. I looked at them. Okay. You looked at them. And what about the people that have a white parent and a black parent? Are they half of the achievement gap? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so you're building this program that is based on nothing. Okay, let's just say that it was all done because there were racist events that happened at school. And as far as I know, that's why they rolled this out. So why, like, first of all, if that happened, what happened to those kids? Were they kicked out of school? Because they should have been. I'm sure racism exists. I'm sure it exists. But I know for a fact that it does not exist in the same capacity that everybody over here is trying to tell me that because my skin is different than this person over here, that I'm a racist. I just don't know it. I mean, that's exactly what the director of equity even said, like, specifically. I'm just going to try to find his exact quote. But he came out and said, this is Dr. Brooks, his exact words are, "It's a mindset. I'm not walking around concerned about individuals in hoodies and burning crosses. They are who they are. I'm not concerned about them. It's the daily individuals that I'm around who ascribe to white supremacist thinking and don't know it. They're the most dangerous." So we hired this guy, and we are now rolling out a program to pit people against each other. You're going to make one side feel bad about themselves because they have apparently hidden white supremacist ideologies, but they don't even know it. And so you make them feel bad. And on the other side, you have the black kids that feel like they're the victim. So both sides, neither side's coming out feeling good about this. They're both feeling bad about this. That's how you create racism. Not like racism only exists because it's taught. You're not born racist. You're not. Like, my heart broke the other day. First day of school, I saw my kid. She comes out and she's holding the hand of a brand new friend she met that day who's black. They're just holding hands. They don't care. They don't care what the other person looks like. They just don't. So let's stop focusing on this. It doesn't work. You're just creating anger and frustration, and you're creating conflict. And I'm not blaming one side or the other. You know who I'm blaming? The people at the top that are doing this on purpose. That's what's happening. And it is extremely frustrating because anybody that raises their voice to it is instantly accused of being racist, which is the silliest thing in the world, because all we're trying to do is say, no, let's just stop making decisions based on how you look, which is the exact opposite of racism, or any other ism for that matter. So let's come together on this and talk it through. But making accommodations for people based on how they look is only going to create additional frustration. Because again, let's go back to this. You go through this equity training, and the teachers are all, run through this thing, and they're told about white privilege and all this stuff, and many of whom feel bad and can't say anything because their boss is the one that's running it. And I know this because they've reached out to me, but they have no choice. They have no choice. They have to follow through. And you come out of this, and what's going to happen is any accommodation that you make is going to be taken advantage of. That's human nature. That is why often in a family that has multiple children, the first one goes through their life and they're held to the fire. They've got rules up the wazoo, and they've got to be home by X time. And by the time that third kid gets through, parents are so tired of dealing with it, like, whatever, just come home alive, right? They are raised differently, and you have different outcomes as a result of that. So this whole notion of making accommodations for people based on how they look, first of all, that is an assumption that there is an achievement gap based on what you look like. That's an assumption, as opposed to getting to the root of why are these kids struggling? Where can we help them? Because what were they doing before this? How is this going to help them learn to read anymore? Because it's not. They're totally unrelated, and they did it in Edina, and they did it in St. Paul, and they did it up in Maple Grove, and it didn't work. It doesn't work. If it worked, you'd have all sorts of statistics around that say that it works, but it doesn't, because it doesn't. As a matter of fact, the only thing that does work, and you can look this up because I did, is charter schools all around the country, in New York, in Harlem, in Chicago, are adopting a no excuses policy. You either get it done or you fail. This is how we build accountability. If you take that away, you're creating a world in which everybody's a winner in their mind, and nobody takes responsibility for their own shortcomings. You're creating a world of perennial victims, where nobody feels like anything that they do is directly responsible for their actions. That's what happens. And you see it everywhere. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with left versus right. It's right and wrong. If there are injustices, let's fix them. But changing an entire community by saying, you know what? I'm not going to reprimand you this time because you're white. I'm not going to reprimand you this time because you're black. Statistically speaking, you've got a higher likelihood of going to the detention or seeing the principal because of how you look, because your eyes are blue. It's the stupidest thing in the world. It is so stupid. And yet, we can't talk about it. We can't bring it up. And the last thing that I want to talk about is this referendum that they've got coming up. And this is our direct action, guys. This is the thing that we can do to make the biggest impact right away. So they're asking for a 10-year referendum. So that means it's a tax for 10 years. And it's based on the property value of your home. So the more your property is worth, the more you're going to be taxed. So again, that's not exactly equal there either, is it? It's the exact opposite of that. Otherwise, it'd be the same percentage, but it's not. So they're asking for, they're saying it's $112 million, and in actuality, it's $211 million. That is a ton of money, guys. That is a ton of money. And historically, whenever these referendums have happened, I have always just voted yes, because to me, it's like, oh yeah, of course I want the money to go to our kids. That's great. Let's do that. But I haven't questioned it because I didn't know. I didn't understand how it all worked, and they use these words that are tricky and hard to understand, and they send these emails out and print these flyers saying vote yes, it's for the kids, yay, right? So you don't really think about it until you start questioning these other things. Why are they doing this? So they just had a referendum. And I'm trying to remember the exact amounts, but I wanted to say it was like $30 or $40 million. And one of the things was to create a new elementary school in Carver and to do additional renovations to Victoria Elementary School. And I remember when they did that, they added in, I believe they added in rooms to Victoria Elementary School that were going to a preschool. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, what a great idea. That's awesome. Like what a great way. You can now, if you've got kids that go to that school, you can have them go to school even before kindergarten. Awesome. And then I started to realize, well, wait a second. The preschool is not affiliated with the elementary school. The preschool is a totally separate entity that is run by community education. Well, community education is funded by your taxes. All of the adult programs, all of the little sports camps, those are all tax-based events. All things that are run through your taxes, and then you pay for them in addition to enrolling. Okay? So what I started to realize was, well, wait a second. They're asking for more money right now because they're saying that our schools, we don't have the space in our schools because the population is going through the roof. Well, our population has been increasing pretty constantly for the last 5 years, and as a matter of fact, our projected population is higher than what it actually is right now. So they were wrong in their current projection, and that's how they're basing all this money off of. They say, well, by 10 years from now, our population is going to be through the roof, so we got to start building now. But yet they just did this in Carver, and they didn't do it big enough. So that was only 2 years ago. So these same people that have already been wrong about their projections are going to be right this time? That doesn't make any sense. Why do we assume that? Because they say so? That's silly. But back to my other point, we found out that these class sizes at Victoria were up to like 29 per classroom. They don't have the room, so they needed to bring in other teachers. And so they got those class sizes down. But then I realized, well, wait a minute, they've got, I think it's 4 classrooms at that school at least that are being used for preschool. Well, wait a minute, the preschool, which is run by Community Education, which also has an enrollment fee of $44 per day, is taking up physical space in the public school that we also pay for. So what they're doing is they're squeezing class availability at the same time as bringing in more kids. So they're using that space for something that's not associated with the school. Now the problem with that is, like I said, you're already paying for it in taxes, and you're already paying for it the public school with taxes too. But the issue is that you're taking away that physical space. Where think of what those class sizes could be if you now have those 4 extra classes without a preschool, right? Now your class size is 22. Maybe that goes down to 18. I don't know, but it's definitely going to be improved. But they did this. There's 160 kids in Carver County right now that are in preschool that's taking up physical space in a school that could be used for public school. 160 kids that they're monetizing privately. So meaning they're taking in $44 per day. That doesn't include lunches. On average, I think the school kids go to school here for about 180 days a year. So I just did some really remedial math on it. I said, well, you got 160 kids. Maybe 60% of them go full-time, every day. So we'll just do some math, and the number that I came up with was $750,000. That's the low end that the county is taking in on top of the tax dollars that we're already paying. And they're asking for more money. So these people are being frivolous with your dollars. They're not telling you where it is. So, because do you know where your tax dollars go? I don't know where my tax dollars go. I don't know how it's broken up. I think I heard a statistic where our teachers are at like 47% of the state. Like that's where they sit from a salary perspective. So we're not even paying the teachers that much. So here they are, they're saying, well, we need this amount of money because we have to build this school over here, even though we're taking away school space already. And they've done this historically, and even though they've been wrong about population before, and even though they were wrong about building the size of the public school just 2 years ago, these same people, and threatening to take away programs, even though they have the ability to pay an equity director that they didn't ask us about, that they didn't tell us about, that we had no feedback about, and they won't let us talk about it because they've now limited the rules to 45 minutes, and that didn't exist before. And we're paying him $140,000 a year at the same time as administering a $30,000 equity training to all of our teachers that they had to go to. But they don't have the money for 5th grade band, and they've got to cut that. Sorry, guys. I know this is a rant. I know it's long, and I hope that you are getting the same feelings that I am on this. and that you're willing to ask the questions, because something is afoot, something is rotten. We've tried to bring it up, they won't listen to us. So it's up to you. So what you have to do is you've got to vote no on that referendum, because you know what? There's nothing that says we have to do it now. We can do it next year, but we need to gain clarity on what is real right now, because the numbers that they're throwing at us are wrong. They're misleading. They're not being transparent. We got to get to the bottom of this. This is not conspiracy. This is not crazy talk. This is just asking questions, because we love our children. We want our school systems to be the best in the state. There's a reason that Minnetonka is where they are right now, because they aren't subscribing to any of this other nonsense. They're sticking to the game. Teach math. Teach my kid verbs. Stop telling them to feel bad about themselves because of what they look like. Because again, if you go back to it, what were you doing beforehand? How does making them feel bad about something help them learn to read? It doesn't. We want the safety of all of our children. We want to be living in the best district in the state. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I hope you understand that. I hope you feel that too. I feel that in my heart, because it's irrelevant. Having discussion and differences is good. You want to be able to do that. That's how we learn. Prove me wrong. I'm willing to be proven wrong on something. And I hope you are too. Because this is our future, guys. This is important stuff. And if you aren't listening now, before you know it, the world that you thought you lived in isn't going to be the same world that you are at that time. It isn't. It's going to change, and you missed the opportunity to affect it in a positive way, or at least get your opinion out there. Okay? All right. Much love.